We're just gonna have to, oops, now it's not even doing that. Ah, there we go. Oh, jeez. I love technology. All right. I'm gonna just go, since I'm standing here, go ahead and share who I am. Danielle Cox, Director of Education for the Maryland Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, overseeing all the education programs within our state prison system. Also the Director of Sustainability for COABE on the board, and I didn't have room to fit it there, but also the president-elect of the Correctional Education Association's Council, National Council of Correctional Education Directors. Jeff, why don't you go next?
Sure. Hi. Good morning, everybody. My name is Jeff Abramowitz. Microphone.
Yep.
It's on.
There you go. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Jeff Abramowitz. I'm the CEO of a wonderful organization called the PD Green Program and also the Puttkamer Center for Educational Justice. And we do educational tutoring both behind the walls of our prisons and jails across the country, as well as people matriculate home. I also am on the COABE board. I'm Director of Strategic Initiatives for COABE, and wear a whole bunch of other hats, some of which I'll talk about today in the work that I do. But I find myself kind of in the center of adult education, workforce development, and criminal justice.
Let's see here. Alan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hopefully everybody can hear me all right. And sorry I couldn't be there in person, but I'm appreciative of still being able to join virtually. Alan Walkendorf, I'm an associate director with the Vera Institute of Justice. Vera is a national research, advocacy, and technical assistance nonprofit that focuses on the criminal justice and immigration systems to implement policies that help make our community safer and our criminal justice system more just. And my initiative has specifically focused on expanding access to post-secondary education opportunities for people in prison and employment opportunities for people when they come home.
And Belinda.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Belinda Wheeler. I'm a national consultant in the higher education and prison space. I currently manage two portfolios. One is with the College Board, where I'm a justice and workforce. I think my full title's on there. It's a very long title. And then I also have another portfolio with Voorhees University. They have a small college and prison program in South Carolina where we have 11 students there as well. So I'm the executive director of correctional education there. So it's a pleasure to be with you all.
All right. Thank you. Yeah. I'm gonna have to stand up here because I think I gotta take and use that button. Oh no, now it's working. I swear to God. All right, now I can come up here and talk. We're gonna talk about the restoration of Pell Grants and now the workforce Pell arrival into the system and combining those resources to create we're calling it like a once in a lifetime or once in a generation opportunity to make sure that our incarcerated students are connected to real careers. A couple learning objectives for today. We're going to describe how restored regular Pell Grants and workforce Pell expand opportunities for our incarcerated learners, identify key components of effective pre-release to post-release employment pathways, analyze national and state examples connecting correctional education to meaningful employment, and developing a blueprint for cross-sector collaboration so that we can build those post-release pipelines. And, you know, just a really quick shout out to panel-wise, you can see we have a wealth of knowledge and different people in different spaces on the panel to kind of talk about this. All right. Who's taking this one? Is this you, Jeff, or Alan? I don't remember.
Yeah.
Well, how about we'll share it? Alan, you want to talk a little bit about it?
Sure. I think we had Jeff listed on this one, but I'm happy to say a little bit about it.
Prepared a lot, didn't we?
So I guess the first thing I want to start off by saying that I'll use the microphone.
Is that, you know, I come to this with a different lens than I think some of our panelists because I I'm formerly incarcerated. I was a lawyer for a long time, made some bad choices in life, ended up going behind the walls, and saw some of these things in action, really behind the walls as they were being developed and built out. When we talk about the landscape of today, I think the first thing we have to acknowledge is that we're in a changing world. Like 15 years ago, to see correctional education and have a higher education and prison program would be unheard of. And I think we're beginning to see the fruits of some of that. Last week, was unable to get there. Almost all my staff were there. We're at the NCHEP conference in Cleveland, which is Higher Education and Prison Program. And it was filled with people that are going through and getting college degrees. And they're working through. There are some nuances and changes and some challenges with our Pell program and the implementation of it. But with it is also come a recognition that college is within grasp of people that are behind the walls. It's what happens next. And there are some problems that we're going to talk about with Pell and be really frank about them. And I mentioned in the last workshop, forgive me, I kind of lost my filter when I went away to prison. So I kind of just call things the way they are and how we see it. But in our federal system, the work, while we've had the Pell Grant initiatives inside of our walls, there's some issues that we struggle with all the time as far as how they're actually implemented. We know that we have professors inside that colleges and universities are giving that are giving credits, but I'll be honest, I'm not sure anyone has a really good handle on its success. Like, how do you know that the Pell Grant initiative behind the walls is really a good thing and that it's really doing what it was meant to do by helping people complete? Because the truth is, when you walk outside of a prison and jail and you step outside that door, the last thing you're thinking about is, man, I need to get my college degree right now. I need a house. I need food. I need identification. I need all these basic things. So the Pell Grant initiative at the federal level is one thing kind of been working through, and we're seeing some successes in it. I think the long range data is yet to really come around. I will tell you from what I've seen that the completion rate itself is not something that we should be touting on Capitol Hill, to be honest. But Workforce Pell is right around the window. I mean, it's right here on our doorstep. We're talking about what does it mean? How are we going to implement it? We'll talk about some of the Workforce Pell today and the accountability measures. And one of the things that are challenged in both Pell and Workforce Pell is going to be how do you account for that? Like, what are the metrics they're looking for? And they're going to be really tough. So if you're thinking about, if you're a college or institution that are applying for Workforce Pell, there are going to be some metrics there that you're going to have to keep your eye on the ball. And then there's the state level. And, you know, we break this. I was in a federal facility, but in the state facilities where we see most of the work being done. The federal facilities really haven't embraced Workforce Pell the Pell Grants very much. It's the state level that we're seeing a lot of the work being done through NCHEP and others. So I think part of what we're going to see today and talk about is really this landscape and what's next. Like, where are we driving this? And is this really sustainable? So I have some opinions I'll share, but I think that they're all things that we should be talking about in these rooms to understand, can it continue to exist? And what are the other things that might be really cool of kind of building in so that we can make sure that they're sustainable programs? So we'll get there.
And really quick, I want to kind of point out the differences here. Jeff, you talked a little bit about the completion rate. That's one of the problems with Workforce Pell, is those post-release completion and employment rates. If any of you work in corrections, how often do you get completion rates from your individual students after they are released, right? How often do you know that they got a job, they stayed in a job, they sustained a job, they went to college, they did this? Raise your hand if you get that data. Okay, see? So, right there. And then the other requires the difference between the two at the state level. One, the workforce requires the approval by the governor, whereas regular Pell is the approval by the oversight entity, me, GOC, where they're going into, right? One of the negatives that I found when they were going through the whole Workforce Pell approvals and negotiated rulemaking and all, really corrections was not put on the forefront and considered, especially with what is required from regular Pell and how that would negatively affect then the workforce. So if we're making these rules for one and these rules for another one, how is that going to work, right? Especially when we're not asking the people who actually run the prisons the colleges that are in the prisons, their voice in the matter at all. Whereas when we did regular Pell Grants, those voices were there. The incarcerated voice was there. The college voice was there at the time. So that's some of the issues that we're seeing with the. Did you have a
Yeah, I
question?
was also just gonna say, we're literally seeing a changing environment as well from the university and college end, where
Right.
colleges now are looking for, they're looking to boost enrollments.
Mhm.
Enrollments around the country are down, and now we're throwing this other wrench into this ecosystem. And this is like credit, these are occupational trades. And oh my gosh, we should be thinking about these trade certifications and what that's going to land to and that career. And I think now we're seeing a realization from universities and colleges that maybe this should be on our radar screen. We should be thinking about it.
And if I could just jump into, I really want to underscore what everyone has said here, but particularly Danielle with the traditional Pell for the Pell grants for people who are incarcerated. So the federal one where we're talking about PEPs, prison education programs. And as Daniel pointed out, I was actually on the negotiated rulemaking, and it was so well thought out, and it was a long process, but it had all those voices at the table, as Danielle had mentioned. Workforce Pell, yes, there was negotiated rulemaking, but it was super fast tracked. There were not as many people in the room. So depending on where you're coming to this topic, here in person or online, just really want to underscore that the Workforce Pell is very different from the PEP. So, whether you're representing a college here, a nonprofit, corrections agency, it's definitely not a one size fits all. I will say, wearing my Voorhees University hat, we are no way thinking of, and we do offer some shorter term credentials. We are no way going to be looking at Workforce Pell anytime soon for a lot of different reasons, but we're very happy to be, a current second chance Pell program that is working towards becoming a PEP. So just wanted to underscore everyone's good points that these are not cut and paste. Thanks.
am going to probably, I think you could do it on Lenovo, upload it, so I'll do that this week. Yep.
Can I just add, before you move on, can I add a few things?
Sure.
Yeah, and also I learned my lesson already. Don't give up the mic when somebody hands it to you. There's just a few things that I want to highlight here that all of this requires a lot of collaboration. That's the key piece, I think. With the return of regular Pell Grants or traditional Pell Grants, as Belinda alluded to, it requires extra layers of approval beyond what a college typically needs to do to approve a new program, and that includes a corrections partner approval. And I think that's important to note. And similarly, with workforce Pell Grants, that's going to require an approval from the governor's office. So you have this additional layer of a collaboration that's required to actually be able to even get this started in the first place. And similarly, on the like, as somebody who provided technical assistance to Second Chance Pell for years, I think because it was new, or it was returning and new to a lot of people, oftentimes we're thinking of it as this just separate pot of money. Like Pell is a different thing in the prison system than all of the other funding that exists to support education programs in the correction system. And I think that we need to get away from that thinking and get to put our heads together and think about, how does this particular funding stream, or in this case, two new sources of funding, how can that be braided with all of our other existing funding streams like WIOA and Perkins and state funding and all of the other education funding streams and reentry supports? How can we think about this as a whole ecosystem of funding that can be complementary to one another, and rather than in a silo? And then lastly, the data piece of this, getting back to Jeff's point about completions, I mean, we are definitely seeing completions, so I don't want to scare anybody away, but that's also takes a village, right? You got colleges collecting data, you have corrections collecting data, you have workforce systems collecting data, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these separate pieces of data, and how can we, again, come together as a community and think about who is collecting what and how can we combine all of that to see that this is really working and that we're aligning programs so that people who are receiving this education opportunity are actually getting their money's worth and getting what they're hoping to get out of it. And that's a good job, right?
I was just going to mention the one thing that Alan did not mention is private sector funding and getting employers to the table to look at how can we support these programs better and then actually hire the individuals going through those programs.
Mm-hmm. Yep. All right. Okay. All right. All right. Just a couple of little facts. Participants in post-secondary education programs have 48% lower odds of returning to prison. So looking at kind of that recidivism rate, every dollar invested in prison education yields $4+ in taxpayer savings. College coursework reduces in-prison violence. We see where, you know, when they're engaged doing work and in education, whether it's college or ABE or GED programs, we are less likely to see those violent acts within our prison system. So that's not just safety for the incarcerated population, but also staff. By 2027, 70% of jobs will require education beyond high school. So when we are looking at these different types of prison education programs that put behind fence higher ed, we need to make sure we are also looking at those jobs in the labor market in which our population can actually get, for one. And also we'll be able to, if we give them a higher education degree, will they even hire them at the pay and the salary in which a higher education degree deems, right? Worthy of. People who participate describe the experience as transformative. We hear that all the time. You know, they're able to set goals for both during prison and then post-release, focus on the future. And I hear this a lot too, kind of their new person, their new identity that comes up. Okay. Who has the prison to career? Alan?
I'll kick it off, and then there are a couple bullets here that I want to make sure and pull others in on this. But this first part here gets at uh, sort of a prison to career pipeline that we're building at Vera and working with a couple of states to um, sort of model, see what works about it and see what doesn't. But before I even get into talking a little bit about sort of the stages of that model and what that looks like inside the system, there's really a lot of work that has to be done up front. This gets back to my earlier comments about everybody putting their heads together. I think there are some key partners that have to come together. That includes colleges, businesses, as Jeff mentioned earlier, of course, the corrections partner, workforce boards, and then the students themselves. If people aren't motivated and interested in the pathway that they're getting on, then that's a missing key piece. So without all of these key pieces coming together to say, okay, what programs are we going to offer? Are they programs that people want? And are they going to lead to good careers for people and be a pathway that people actually have access to with a criminal background? Then any one of those pieces can actually make this fall apart. And then from there is actually the second bullet. We've alluded to this a couple of times already, and we did some research on this. If you just Google Vera good jobs, this report will come up, but it's thinking about credential pathways that are aligned to good jobs. So thinking about those in-demand careers that pay well, but also don't have very clear restrictions on people with a criminal background being able to apply for it and get those jobs. Um, that's the starting point. And then if you think about that pipeline, if you will, that education pipeline inside of systems, we're really pushing for the idea that there's a lot of work done as soon as somebody enters the prison system and they're in what we call intake or quarantine, sitting down with them and figuring out, well, what kind of education background do you have already? Do you have, what does your resume look like right now? And what can we get you to make sure we can get you on that pipeline? So it may be they need some adult basic ed and GED. I think about half of the population in some states doesn't have that credential. So that might just be the starting point. Build an education case plan for them that gets them on that pathway. And what's so beautiful about all of these opportunities is that back in the day, like I'm formerly incarcerated too. When I was in and Jeff, we were in, a lot of times that was the end of the pathway. GED, that was it. And now there's something beyond that we can get people something more to aspire to. But we have to get them that credential first. But once we get that, we can get them onto this career pipeline that's aligned with the industry needs and aligned with their interests and moving through. And then from there, get people into the programming. And then, of course, that's where folks like Jeff and his people come in. It's not just about getting into a program. You also have to you need those supports, right, to be able to complete the program. And tutoring is a key piece of that. We can tap into peers for that. We can tap into other resources. And then another feature that we're really seeing in the states we've surveyed and interviewed that have done really well with this quote unquote pipeline, one key piece that they have that some other states don't have is what they're calling a job developer or a career navigator. And that's somebody that's really doing a two-part job. One is they're out there in the community developing relationships with businesses, bringing them in to meet people and be proximate to people and understand that they're just humans, they're just people, and don't be scared of them, and also see the wonderful skills that they're gaining while they're incarcerated and be more willing to hire them. The other side of that is working with the people, with the students, and helping them understand how to articulate the skills that they're gaining into a career. Resume building, mock interviews, job fairs, things like that, but really playing that key role of connecting what's happening in their education to the world. So I'll stop with that to let other people chime in. But as you can see, the theme here is everybody working together. We're all part of this pipeline.
Thanks for that, Alan. Before I pass the mic to Jeff, I just wanted to mention, I wanted to pull that thread with the intake that Alan had mentioned. And this is something that we've done at Voorhees University, but I kind of want to put my college board hat on for this. I think one of the parts before, like as Alan had mentioned, when people come into the carceral location, there's a lot of things that can be done to kind of assess where they're at, right? And I have to say, AccuPlacer is an excellent assessment that can help determine where people are at academically, but where people are at with workforce readiness as well. And you can have, yes, corrections. We have a number of customers that are corrections that purchase AccuPlacer, but we also have a number of colleges. If any of you are in the college systems here, you're very familiar with AccuPlacer. I know we make it available to all our students on the outside. Let's make it available to our students on the inside, and let's do it early in the process. So as we're determining what kind of pathway will be beneficial for the students, what kind of career readiness do you have? What kind of college readiness do you have? If they don't have their GED yet, AccuPlacer's an excellent exam that the federal government recognizes for ability to benefit. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that program, but that allows, if people get a certain score that the federal government has got those scores available, If someone gets those scores and they're currently working on their GED, the government says you have the quote unquote ability to benefit for a college education. So the federal government will allow those individuals, while they're completing their GED, to start taking college classes. We've also seen in a number of college and prison programs, I'll lift up University of St. Mary in Kansas. They use the AccuPlacer exam for a lot of different things, including identifying students who'd make great tutors. And they've actually had a number of students score the perfect score on the AccuPlacer with the pencil and paper. Absolutely no cheating here, like amazing people. And it was done by the University of St. Mary very early when the people were going through that intake process and they were identifying individuals. So I think that there's a lot of different ways that, you can lean into products again that you're already utilizing for your traditional students on the campus and use that for the students on the inside. And that's something that we're really integrating at Voorhees University we're working on our second cohort and we're, already starting to look at, let's get AccuPlacer in. And then another thing I'll just mention super quick, the CLEP. I'm a CLEPper. I'm someone who took a course and was able to get 3 credits as an international student. That would have cost me a boatload. And I, took the one fee for the CLEP and got 3 credits for that. I've got a number of students, one at Voorhees that is releasing in 2 weeks' time. He still has about, I think it's 21 credits that he needs to get during the summer. Voorhees doesn't usually offer classes, but again, he's going to be releasing. So I was like, we're setting him up with a laptop and everything. And I was like, we're going to get you connected with the Modern States program where you can get your CLEP exams for free. And he's going to earn 9 credits just with that. And he's going to do it after hours, after he's done his day job, to continue working towards, and then later go into the traditional online classes and stuff like that too. So there's a lot of things that we utilize for our traditional students on the outside that I really think are very important for this pathway for people, both educational wise and workforce wise as well. Jeff.
So I guess today I'm filling the role of the reality checkometer because quite frankly, inside of our prisons, there are many things that motivate students inside to take or not take classes. I got inside and I was going through my orientation. Somebody came up to me and they handed me a little piece of paper. It said A on it. And I said, what the heck? What do I do? He says, Mr. A, it's just A. Just every answer on the test, just mark A. And the reason was because that if you did well in the test, you would probably get assigned to a place where you don't want to be. You might get an education where they don't pay you very much inside the prison, or it might interfere with the softball league inside the prison, or it might pull you out of a kitchen duty where you can actually steal food that's somewhat edible. Like, there are all these reasons and motivations inside of a prison and jail, and a lot of times it has absolutely nothing to do with their ability to pass an AccuPlacer test or anything else, or even want to go to college. It could just be that they don't want it to interfere with other things going on within the institution, and that's something that we have to be super mindful of. And there's a thing inside a prison called inmate.com. It's where word gets out about something and it becomes gospel. And, and those are the things you want to be mindful of and talk to the students and say, what's up with this? Like, is this really going to work? And can we do it at this time? Or does this interfere with something else? I saw a program once that they were trying to launch at a prison and they did it on a Sunday. Now, they did it on a Sunday because that's when it was an outside program they were bringing in. That's when they needed to do it. Do you know that not a single person would go to this program because it interfered with the NFL? It's football Sunday. Like that, they're launching it in the middle of football Sunday, and it's a big deal inside. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that, there are also a lot of these things that are happening in this ecosystem of workforce Pell with the high priority job requirements that we cannot, as justice impacted individuals, do those jobs. I don't care who you are. If you talk to any employer down at the Naval Shipyard in Philadelphia and you ask them, can somebody work on one of your naval jobs having a criminal background check, they're going to tell you, don't even bother applying. So we have to be careful of what we're setting people up for. You know, can they really do the job? Can they get licensed? Is an employer even going to hire them? Or is the cost of insuring them so darn high that it doesn't make any sense for them? So I think it's just not as clean as we want to get them smarter and give them the right classes. It's also aligning it with the ecosystem. And as Alan said, making sure everybody is at the table at the same time, including people that are justice impacted.
I'm going to talk a little bit more about, but I want to hit with the credit for prior learning. This doesn't happen. Like it happens in very little places, unfortunately. But when we talk about credit for prior learning, I'm talking about like where, say, somebody, for example, takes a career and technical education pre-apprenticeship program, right? And then they take and work with a community college to take and give prior credit for that for maybe the first year of a apprenticeship or like some sort of like workforce program behind that the college offers. For example, we offer a manufacturing CTE program, right, behind the fence, like pre-apprenticeship, that sort of thing. Works with a community college for them to get prior learning credit for them to get the first year, and then they went into an advanced manufacturing AA degree, right? So they already had some credits going into that because they took that. It took 2 years to make that happen, and a lot of talks and a lot of collaboration with that community college. And the first couple that we talked to didn't want anything to do with it, so it was just, you know, a lot of talking. The state that does this really well is Ohio. They have a lot of different, big shout out to Jen Sanders for that. Right. She did an amazing job as the in the director position for correctional lab, working with those colleges to provide that prior learning credit for those type of programs, which will now align a good bit with that workforce Pell stuff. If they're able to take and use some of that prior learning credit to then go into a workforce Pell, you know, pay for program, then take less time to get the degree, right? And it also is less than that the college has to bring in behind the fence. So
If I
But-
could just, oh, sorry, please. I just want to piggyback. This is a perfect example. So before, let's see, as of December of last year, I was a colleague with Alan. So I was working with him at the Vera Institute of Justice. And then in January, I started being a national consultant. And so there's students at Voorhees University and in the facility that for whatever reason, the college and maybe SCDC, whatever happened, things fell through the cracks, and the students have mounds of credentials. So when I started my job at Voorhees in February, I was like, hang on, where are these credits for prior learning that Danielle is just talking about? And I've seen it a lot of times too in my previous career and that too. And it's so critical, whether you're doing philanthropic work, workforce Pell, PEP, whatever, that you're doing a very thorough review of what those students are bringing to the table if they do decide to do college classes, because they have a boatload. So at Voorhees, talking with the president and the provost, we actually suspended classes for block 2 of spring just so that we could do this comprehensive audit that all of these students should have received before their tushies were in the seat on the very first day for freshmen, you know. So, and we're going to have a number of students. It's going to be anywhere from 6 credits. One student's going to get, I think it's looking like he's going to get 21 credits.
Right.
And again, it's luckily, you know, it's something that we're fixing, but we're making sure that from here on out, when we're looking at the second cohort that we're going to have, there's that huge audit that's going to take place, because again, I had stacks from my 11 students, I think all piled up. For the students, it was about this big, and they deserve credit for the work that they've done. So it's something that, you know, was missed at the beginning. We're fixing it now, and we will make sure that it never happens again. But I think it's very common that colleges are not doing that. And I just wanted to underscore your excellent point, Danielle.
just goes back to that intake process. You know, we're not just like putting out an application to the incarcerated population, getting them enrolled out of sort. We're making sure that we're sitting down with them too, to go over with what it is that they did prior to coming into prison, while they were in prison, to see if that can be accomplished. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit about Maryland's model. So MACPEP, this Maryland Advisory Committee on Prison Education Programs. We have an extensive approval process for our higher ed prison education programs in Maryland that involves multiple different partners and collaborations. What I did when Pell, we got the negotiating rulemaking for Pell was first coming out in the fall of 2022. And I knew what was coming down the pipeline. I started right then, asked our secretary of the agency, hey, I want to do this advisory committee. Technically, you don't have to have an official advisory committee that does all the stuff mine does. You just have to have somebody at that best interest determination point to help, you look at that decision or whether or not that they stay behind the fence, continue from that pilot on. However, I looked at it like, okay, if I'm going to bring this group of people in 2 years later to then look at a college and say, should they or should they not stay behind the fence and they don't know anything about them whatsoever, that's an issue, right? They need to be involved from the get-go before we even start approving programs. So we had where I went to multiple different agency partners, multiple different, we have two previously incarcerated people on that also, one of which went to one of our colleges that's currently behind the fence, another that has their own business now, and then also looked at the heads of multiple different agencies. I was the first one to reach out to the president of Middle States, Heather Perfetti, and said, hey, will you be on my advisory committee as an ex officio member, not a voting member? Because also part of my approval path is Middle States approval. That's anybody's approval path, is that the approval of your accreditation. So she couldn't actually vote, but she's on there if we have questions and need support when it comes to accreditation and that sort of thing. In addition, I don't know if I'm the only state that has our higher education commission sitting on my advisory committee, but the assistant secretary of our higher education commission also sits on there. Again, they're both ex officio non-voting because they also have to go through them for approval too, and to get an approval letter. So they first have to come to me to get a conditional approval letter. That's where they first come in and say, hey, I want to do this program behind the fence. What do you think? I want to do here, this facility. I then take a look at to see, okay, one, does my population even interested in that? Two, I'll get to the MLDSC a little bit more later, but that's our longitudinal data system, working with them to say, okay, what does the labor market look for somebody with this degree? They send me a quarterly outlook for anybody who has graduated in certain labor markets with certain degrees throughout the state. So basically, we're looking at all college graduates within a 6-month period, like 6 months after graduation, and where they're falling in the labor market. So if somebody comes to me with a degree in, I don't know, sociology, and I look at people who aren't even justice involved, and they're not able to get a job 6 months after graduation in that field, then my people will also have a hard time getting a job in that field. In addition, there's many different things that require certifications and licenses within that degree path that many of them might not be able to get due to certain felonies, criminal records. So then I go back to them and say, hey, no, we're going back to the drawing board, that sort of thing. But then I have to talk to the wardens and all, whether or not this is something that they'll be able to handle with staff and all that kind of good stuff. Give them a conditional letter of approval. It's conditional because they still then have to go to our Maryland Higher Education Commission, get the approval through them to do another site, an additional site. And then once they get that letter, they come back to me, and that's when my advisory committee comes into play. They do the application through our Department of Corrections. They have to fill that out. That goes to the advisory committee. They read over that application, and we make a decision, vote to say whether or not that program can come behind the fence or not. After that vote, my secretary signs an official letter. Okay, you're good to go. And then we start the MOU process. The Middle States accreditation, once we get a draft of the MOU, they then will allow the college to start doing their process with just that draft. I don't know, anybody in corrections know how long it takes to sign an MOU? A while. So they do that so that they can at least get that process started. However, they will not do the final sign off and letter until the actual signed MOU is in their hands. Then at that point, that's when they go take all those different letters and approvals down to the U.S. Department of Ed for that final approval. And just shout out, our 6th college just got approved yesterday. And that is, they must have been looking at all of Maryland during March and April because they all got approved within like 3 weeks of each other. So yay. That one of the things that we also did, get to partnerships here, the University System of Maryland, we have a massive MOU with the entire university system. So that's all 12 of the colleges. And it's an umbrella MOU with the university system. And that means that any one of those colleges can then come under that MOU with just an addendum saying what program they're going to offer. So that takes and cuts down that 6-month time period to create an MOU to about a month, because all they're doing is handing me, this is what the program we want to offer, signatures, and that's it, because the big one's already signed by all parties, and has all the necessary stuff in it. Now, some my private colleges, a little different, like they're not under that, but they have pretty much the same language as that MOU. It just has to get signed. So those take a little longer. Maryland Department of Labor. So in Maryland, we're the only state where our Department of Labor by law has to provide our adult basic ed, GED, and CTE programs behind the fence. So I work very closely with their correctional education division. It used to be the Department of Ed. They switched it over to Department of Labor in 2008, which was an amazing decision because you have the adult ed division there. You have the apprenticeship division, you have workforce development there, you have GED there. So like everybody is in the same agency. So anytime they need to talk to each other, it's very easy to do so. And it actually has led to even further partnerships with workforce development. They now have reentry navigators that come and work with our population behind the fence and outside the fence. They work at our American Job Centers. They also have apprenticeship navigators that come behind the fence and also work with them outside the fence. And then that has led to us now hiring. Well, let's get the Commerce first. Commerce, all these agencies sit on my advisory committee. So they all have a place on it. All those major agencies, like my assistant secretary for reentry and education, my secretary, I'm on there as her designee, basically. So making sure we're having all those big players at the table, it goes back to that cooperation and those talks that and collaboration Alan was talking about. And then MLDSC, the Maryland Longitudinal Data Systems, like I said, I also get wage and employment data from them for my population post-release. So they are not only giving me my post-secondary students, but also any of our ABE, GED, or CTE students. So quarterly, we send them a new list. Here's everybody who's left recently in this quarter. And then they send us data for anyone who has been released within 1 and 3 years. So I get a new data every quarter on those students. And it tells me where they're falling in the labor market, what jobs they have, how much they're making, and it goes by quarter. So whether they were showing up in the first quarter, second quarter, third, fourth quarter, or all quarters. So then that helps me not only look at programs, CTE programs to offer, but it also helps me look at programs that are not doing well and what do I need to get rid of and change, or even our college programs too. So that'll go really well for when I end up having to do those bench interest determinations later. Our education employment specialists are new. We got a grant from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, DOJ, to hire 3. They are under the state of Maryland as workers, but contractual pins. So that means it's a 3-year grant. They got job security for 3 years. But then after that, we're hoping that everything goes so well that we'll be able to get full-time positions for them. They actually work with our students. They're behind the fence 50% of the time. They're outside the fence 50% of the time. They work right now just specifically with our post-secondary population, 2 years before release and 1 year post-release. So anybody who's getting ready to leave within 2 years, they do a reentry plan with them. And that is sitting down and looking at their previous education that they've done, education goals now, whether or not they're going to finish their degree while incarcerated, post-release, and then their employment goals. What do you want to do post-release, right? So what do I need to set you up with if we get your degree while you're incarcerated? What different employers do I need to bring to the table at job fairs? We have the Origin platform, if anybody's familiar with that. We can actually do the applications through that platform and interviews through that platform. And we've done job fairs with where we bring the employers in, they do interviews on site too. But again, what we're finding is that a lot of the employers who say they're fair chance hires, yes, they are, but they're not hiring them where they should be hiring them at, the level at which they should be hiring them at. So that's, or they say they are, and when it comes down to the nuts and bolts about it, there's so many restrictions or exclusions of who they will hire that it, kind of makes it a little bit difficult for our population. But they meet with them pre-release and then post-release. Once they get out, they meet with them also. They all have offices that are every single one of our libraries in our Maryland library system. They can go meet with them there. All of our colleges allow us in the university system to meet with them there. So they'll meet with them at Starbucks if they have to, wherever, as long as it's a public place. And the biggest thing that they're trying to do is ensure that not only they continue their education if they need to and get a job, but also we give them everything they need to do that. That they're getting transportation support, that if they need childcare, if they need housing, that we're making sure, because without that stuff, they're not going to be able to sustain they're not going to be able to go to college, continue that, or get a job. We have nowhere to go back to, or I can't eat, or I have no way to get there because I don't have a car, then we need to make sure. So we actually give out what they're called charm cards in Baltimore. Most of our population goes back to Baltimore City, Baltimore County, but it's our bus system. So we actually, as part of that grant, we got some funds to be able to give out bus passes to our post-secondary population to be able to make sure that they're able to get to these places too, post-release. Michigan. Are you, Alan?
Yeah, I'll speak to Michigan. I love this model, this vocational village model. Folks may have heard of this. But what's really cool about it to me, if you visit them, some portions of it are repurposed buildings, some of it's new additions because most prisons weren't built with enough classroom space. But it really, once you get there and get inside, it looks like a college level classroom, and that's one thing we learned from them, or a lesson that they shared with us in Michigan, was that they really needed the spaces to look like a shop floor, so that when a business partner comes in and sees it, it looks like what the person would be working in the world outside of prison. So they're really beautiful spaces with labs down one side and classroom spaces down the other. But people are recruited from across the state to come to one location. They have 3 different sites, 2 in facilities for men, 1 in the one state prison for women, with all of these different trades that you can get there. But it's really an immersive experience for them, because it's not just go to classes a couple hours a day and then go to do your kitchen job. This is your job all day. Like, you go from a 9 to 5 schedule where you're on site learning and working in the classroom, and really truly being prepared for a work environment. Every day, different businesses, employers are coming in and just meeting people and looking at stuff, what's happening. You're, getting used to that get up, go to work, go home type thing while you're still there. And what's also really neat about this is that the facility is combined with people who are also in GED, high school equivalency programs, and college programs. So you sort of have all 3, if you will. So people are seeing each other succeed, and everybody's in education, and it's a different type of prison environment than what often happens when people don't have these experiences. I really like the idea of having adult basic ed and GED programs combined with the college and or post-secondary programs. and that they're invited to the graduations and things like that, because then they get to see what's next for them. If that's, of course, if that's what they want. Um, um, so those are some of the key features of these that I really think are important and innovative. They have really interesting programs too, like a power line clearing program, which is if you go to it, they actually have like telephone poles in the prison, and the poles are taller than the fence, and people are learning how to scale up them like you would if you're a linesman at a power company. They have a full-on tree in the building where people are climbing trees, cutting them with chainsaws. And this all came about because the power company said, look, we can't hire enough people. Our contractors at the tree trimming companies can't hire enough people to get out and clear the lines so that when a storm comes, it doesn't knock our power lines down. And then they invested in this program, and people are learning how to do that and actually getting these jobs and not coming back. So that and uh, that's one key piece of this too that I think is important, is these really intentional program partnerships with businesses. So it's not just, hey, you need to be a second chance employer. We have people coming out of prison, please hire them. It's come in and meet with us and learn, be part of the development of the program, invest in it, and have some skin in the game, but also tell us what you need people to learn so that you will hire them. So it's not just on the receiving end, it's actually a seat at the table and a co-partnership, a co-development of these programs. And so there's a true investment there from the business community to be to be see the folks that are in prison and soon to be leaving prison as part of the skilled trade labor force that can really help them to, be good businesses and grow. Um, yeah, so I think I'll just end on that because I know we're getting short on time, but really a cool, innovative program that took a lot of state investment to get going, but again, can tap into those multiple funding streams that I talked about earlier.
And really quick, I just kind of want to add to that. Alan had mentioned space in prison, like when we're looking at adding more programs, and space is always an issue. So what we had looked at, which is, Michigan's model is really good, and we looked at a couple other models, was, okay, how can we get funding to be able to purchase trailers, educational trailers, to put into the prisons that are just for that college program to use and is outfitted with all the modern technology and that sort of thing. So we worked with the college partners. Goucher was the first. They pilot this to go out and get a grant. It was a federal earmark, actually, to get 2 big trailers. And then we paid corrections to put everything in there, right? I bought smart boards. I bought them Chromebooks. We put all the internet and the Wi-Fi and all that kind of good stuff in there. So being able to make sure talking to your corrections partner, knowing what the limitations are, and then also then getting that buy-in and working together from the get-go. Instead of them going ahead and just buying the trailer, saying, hey, we got these trailers, so where can we put them? It was, hey, we want to go out and request these, right? And so we started at that level and then worked together to get that done. I mean, they had to have bathrooms in them, so they had to make sure they got the ones that had bathrooms, right, for ADA purposes. So then we had to run sewer line, water line, all that good stuff. So I mean, it was like a 2-year project, but it actually, is doing great things now. In addition, now that's at our women's prison, they can actually go as full-time students. And one of the things that we're seeing is that, Alan, I think you mentioned it, was the pay and then wanting to be able to actually be in school full-time because they can make more money working a different job in a prison than what they were getting as a student. So they were making, no matter whether they're ABE, GED, CTE, or post-secondary, $1.15 a day. So we were looking at, okay, wait, why would they even want to? If they can go and make $15 at Maryland Correctional Enterprises, making file cabinets or whatever it is, or sewing, why would they then want to do to $1.15 a day. They really had to be invested in their education for that. So many of them were they're working during the day and then taking part-time classes in the evening. So then it was taking them 8 to 10 years to get their degree, and many were leaving without their degree. And what happens when you leave without it? Typically, life gets in the way and you do not finish. So we were like, okay, if we get these trailers, make it full-time and increase the pay, hopefully we can get it. So we talked to the population. What would be that's secret sauce that would make you want to quit that big that paying job? If we're able to get you a degree in 4 years, we can't pay you 15 bucks an hour, but if I pay you $4 a day, would that get you there? Right? Would that get you to the point where you'd want to take and do it full time? And that's what it was. It ended up being like 310. So then we did a structured for education. The ABE was started at $1.15. GED went up from there. Then it went up. CTE went up because it's a post-sec, technically, it's after your GED. They have to have a GED to get in those. And then post-secondary is even higher. So we did a structured. So as you go up, you make more pay. And then that way, that's incentivizing people to continue then education. So that was one of the great things. And then buy-in. I couldn't have done that without the buy-in of your higher level, right? Like my secretary is amazing. She was my boss's assistant secretary, now the secretary. The fact that I can go to her and just say, hey, I want to do this, and shines off on it is great. So you really have to have the buy-in at the high levels, because that's what then filters down. She can then go to the governor and say, hey, can I get some money for this? Right? So it's really being able to have an administration and teamwork and buy-in from all your people. Jeff, P. Green.
Spoiler alert. So there's about 85% of all people that are incarcerated want to have some educational program or vocational programming
Right.
inside. And yet there's only about 30% of those people that are inside that get serviced at all, period.
Yep.
And there are many reasons for that. The facilities need to function and all these other things that are going on. But one of the hardest, and I mentioned this earlier today at another workshop, the hardest 3 words that somebody that's justice impacted can say are the words, I don't know. And in classes, it's hard for people to say, I don't know how to speak the English language very well. I don't know how to do math. I don't know fractions. I don't know my multiplication table. I don't know how to read very well. And what the PD Green program does is it breaks that down by providing the one-on-one tutoring, where you put them with a college student, or you put them with a tutor, and they're more apt to say, you know what, I really don't know how to do this, and it's a one-on-one place where they're able to meet them where they are and achieve whatever the academic goal is, that whether it's a vocational goal or passing a certification test or getting a high school diploma or even bridging to college. We haven't talked a lot about this, a little bit about this inside out notion, but gosh, we should be thinking about the and then what. If we give somebody a high school diploma, then what? Like, what are they going to do? And we have not prepared ourselves in our systems for that. So when we get people a high school diploma and they want to go into a higher education in prison program, what ends up happening is they take 25 years to take the prerequisite classes, and all their Pell dollars are used up. So when they get home or when they get into their major, there's no Pell funding left for them to even get into it. We have a wonderful college bridge program. Nicole's in the workshop today. We have a wonderful college bridge program that actually provides them those credentials, those essential courses without eating into Pell dollars, so that they're prepared for what's next, so that they're able to say, okay, I'm done my core program. I want to get into that. Let's get into the major. So I think that those are some of the realities of what happens in education, but tutoring is our goal, and we are a national nonprofit. Our goal is to meet students where they are and help them get smarter, period. We haven't heard a lot of talk today about the other smart piece, which is, how about some digital literacy for everybody? Let's make sure when they get out, like, there's not very many people come out and say, you know what, I gotta sit down and I'm gonna apply for a bunch of jobs on my tablet today. It just doesn't happen. They need to be working on laptops. They need to have access to the internet so that they can do their job search and due diligence. But we need digital literacy skills when people come out, and we need to embed things that get people smarter for that next step. And a lot of the programs that we're talking about are amazing. Look, Maryland is in the minority when we talk about the programming that's going on. Michigan and the vocational village, another place. It's in the minority. It's not what most states are doing and what's available in most states. We need to change that trend and really start thinking about, how do we get people laptops before they get out? I was mentioning somebody earlier, we have an employee, a PD Green program that's serving 10 years inside of a Maine prison. That's pretty amazing that he can send home money to help, support his family while he's incarcerated and providing a service inside helping people get smarter. We need to think differently in this space in order to be able to achieve some of the goals that are coming out there. But tutoring is something that is just invaluable.
Absolutely. All right. Who needs to be at the table? I'll go first. Everybody. Just say that, like all from those ABE, even like when it comes down to practitioners, what are you seeing in a classroom, right? The corrections officials, it says educators, right? Colleges, job developers, employers, community supervision, your Department of Parole and Probation, reentry services. In Maryland, we say reentry starts at day one, right? Our reentry specialists meet with our incarcerated population the first day during intake to talk about the reentry process, whether you have 5 years, 10, 20, or 30 years on your sentence, to make sure we're getting you what you need while you're incarcerated to be prepared post-release. But each one of these people play a specific role in ensuring that education not only happens, but is successful, right? We can put all the kind of education programs we want behind the fence, but it's one, whether they are successful in leading to jobs and employment post-release, and two, sustainable, right? Making sure that we're not just putting something in that we can't sustain, whether it be with funding or staff further down the line. Anyone else want to comment about that?
I do.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm a big believer in this, and I think like the Michigan examples, your examples in Maryland, but I don't see it written there, and so just can't have to take the opportunity to say students, residents, right, and those voices, and how they help shape the decision making, not just soliciting their feedback, but really truly like integrating them into the design of programs, and all of the really successful ones that have made such a tremendous impact on people's lives, like yours, like Michigan, like many of the others across the country do a really good job.
And from the beginning, not just as an afterthought. What do you think about this? They should be at the table from the beginning when you're actually, whether currently incarcerated, previously, right? So making sure they're all at the table. Time is it? We got 5 minutes. Did you guys want to say anything about this one? Alan, did you want to comment?
Nope, you covered it. We've said it several times. So
okay. To-do list. Jeff, you want to take this first? We'll just all three. This is the last one. We'll just all three or all four go.
Yeah, I think part of it is just a reality check at your facility of what's possible and what will work. What are the programs that make good sense for you? And it's going to be different in state by state and jurisdiction by jurisdiction. Where are the individuals going back to? What are the industry sectors? And then really being intentional about the workforce Pell and Pell dollars of where you're focusing. So I think part of it is really doing a really good job sitting down with your staff and saying, okay, and I'm talking everybody at the table, and have these convenings. We just had one in St. Louis recently. We're hopefully launching out there. We brought everybody to the table, including some real estate, the Workforce Development Board. And we had them sit down and say, look, what should we say? We need to know what's going on in St. Louis. How can we work? And how can we do it? So I think part of it is looking at everything, including the credentials. And can someone actually get occupationally licensed in that credential down the road if they go through the process? And then figuring out what's next. Like, how do we make that continuum of care happen? Which is that when someone leaves the facility, how do we know that they're actually going to be on a pathway to continue what they're doing? Because they may be this close away from a welding certification when they get that call to walk out the door. And then we need to be able to say, okay, when you leave, you're going to see Danielle or Alan, and you're going to talk to them because they're connected with this program and they can help you get certification you need to finish it up. Otherwise, it becomes a waste.
I'll just add super quick. Making sure that resources that your traditional students get on the outside, you're making them available to the students on the inside. Just again, making sure you're getting credit for prior learning, you're giving them all sorts of resources to help them be successful and, working with career partners and things like that. Just setting them up for success, just like you would your traditional students on the outside.
There's some states that are doing this well with consortiums, right? Like, so for whether higher education, where they have all these people at the table, corrections, employers, workforce development boards, their colleges, that sort of thing. Tennessee has an amazing consortium. We just started one a couple of months ago that our university system in Maryland started up and has everybody's at the table, which is great because when correction, we can't advocate, right? I can't go to Annapolis and advocate for my students, right? I'm just called there to testify, but I can't actually then talk about and advocate for them. However, they can, right? So I can say, here are the issues, here are the problems, here's what I need, and then they can advocate. And I think one of the people we miss is collaborating with legislators, your state legislators, is super important. Making sure they're on board with whatever you are doing and you get their voice to help you with advocating. There's going to be a lot of stuff that requires law changes. And so you need them to be able to be there, have that buy-in for you. And then the existing funding streams, there's so many out there, right? Well, a lot of times we say we don't have the money to do it. We don't have the money to do it. There's so much money left on the table every year that we are not taking advantage of. So it's being able to connect with people who are doing that well and getting that funding well, figuring out what states are doing that, and working together to figure out how that's happening. Alan, you want to say anything to end us?
Nope, that's what I would have said. We have 2 minutes.
Great.
Look,
All right.
thanks
We got
for
like,
I just have one last comment.
Sure.
Which is that there's a great line by Walt Whitman. It was actually quoted in Ted Lasso, if anybody watched the show. But the world be a better place if we were curious, not judgmental. And I think when it comes down to working in these spaces, we have to be curious about what the needs of our students are, what the needs of our staff are, what the needs of the community is when we bring people back and really ask the questions. Because if we don't do that, then what ends up happening is we miss the ball and we miss what the barriers are and how we could make simple changes. For example, just making feminine products available for women, or making sure that there's a place to get resources for baby formula, for diapers, or things that are one of those 40,000 barriers that impact people coming home. So be curious when you're out there and ask those questions and make sure those people are at the table so that, you can be successful.
absolutely. So any questions? And then I have a funny story about the feminine product.
Use this with ability to benefit. So like in our state, we have high school diploma pathways that are like, we're thinking about how workforce Pell could pay for like the technical college certificates while they're still like taking their high school courses. Have you done anything with like dual enrollment in an adult ed program and post-secondary?
We have. Do you know of any that have been successful with it?
There's a bunch. There's a bunch of places up dual enrollment. Some states are doing it really well too. And I'll give you my card. But there's a bunch of places that blend them really well, and the states go the extra yard to make sure those programs exist.
And if there's anyone that needs assistance with ability to benefit, please reach out to me because that's part of my portfolio with College Board.
Yep. To you. We tried to do it a couple of years ago with one of our college partners, and then having them be in the GD program doing that. It did not go very well. Unfortunately, we weren't able to sustain it. Plus the college was having issues with funding because that was prior to them. It was
Let's
a
talk
college.
to Danielle.
What?
Talk to you, my friend.
Exactly.
Solve that issue, my friend.
Yeah, they were having funding issues. We couldn't really give them at the time any money to help sustain it. So unfortunately, it went away.
Along that line too, we talked about it earlier, but and we just got a grant, BJA grant in Pennsylvania, and it took us a year to negotiate the data sharing agreement. Like these programs are not going to be successful unless we can show the work and that we're meeting the metrics, and they are really hard or cumbersome, and they take a lot of time to kind of negotiate. So one of the first things you should be doing if you're getting into this work is start with a sample data agreement that's shared that states are using now,
Mhm.
and getting them through, and get
Yeah.
a head start on it.
And for prison education programs, Vera Institute of Justice that Alan had mentioned, they have a sample data
Yeah.
sharing agreement that could be adapted for different needs.
Right, right. Absolutely. Anybody else? Okay. I'm gonna let you. Stacy. Did you work? You had something that you were gonna give out?
How are you here with JFF Jobs for the Future? And we just launched a national initiative, their chance to advance, and doing many of the things that have been talked about in the session. But I'll have some cards that I can give you on your way out, if you'd like to be engaged in any of our national networks.
And we also have stuff on PD Green if anyone wants.
Yep. And if you are in correctional education, working in correctional education, is the application still online for CELA right now? I think
Yes.
it's still up. The Correctional Education Leadership Academy, which was run previously by Vera. Vera is now kind of stepping out of that post-secondary space because Second Chance Pell ended. So JFF, Correctional Education Association and Alliance kind of did a little three-way partnership to be able to continue that. So if you are in corrections and interested, that is up online, right?
And I will say, oh,
Jen Sanders, who you mentioned, who has a long time in corrections in Ohio.
Yep. Absolutely.
and College Board, we have a table here in the exhibition area, and my colleague Sue Smitch has a session at 8 a.m. tomorrow morning to talk a little bit more about AccuPlacer and stuff like that. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, Alan.
Oh, just to be clear, we're not stepping out of the post-secondary space. We're just not
Wow.
for
It's
technical,
not quite, not out of it completely, no.
not doing the free TA.
Tearing down, I should say.
But
Thank you, Alan.
uh,